All right, what's going on, guys? Another episode of the Growth by Shawn podcast. I'm here with Bryan Fitzsimmons here. So, what's up, brother?
What's up, man? Happy to be here.
Oh yeah. Um, so Bryan, really just let us know a little bit about you, um, and what you do now and who you are, all that good stuff. Just paint us the picture of who we're talking to and the professional that you are. So,
Sure. I'll do my best because I tend to brush over it. But basically, like, I am a fat loss coach for moms over 40 in a nutshell. But I do my best to put out as best of information as I possibly can over the past, since like 2015, I've been doing this. And yeah, just putting good stuff out there, trying to help people out. And I do a mix of in person and online.
yeah. So, the biggest question right from the get-go is why is this your niche? Like, how'd you even start to approach moms?
Yeah, so it's very funny because that's the thing that comes up all the time is like, how do you land on moms over 40?
Yeah.
And I got to tell you, a lot of people get into our profession wanting to work with celebrities, athletes, like super high performing. And I'm like, I was never really pulled in that direction because my very first job after getting certified was at Get in Shape for Women. It's a chain out of Boston, and I'm not even sure if they're still around, but it's
Hmm.
basically a Curves. And for anybody who knows what a Curves is, it's like a women's only gym, like circuit style group classes. And you could say a lot about the types of workouts we were doing, not exactly ideal, but working with those ladies that were 40, 50, 60, 70, sometimes 80 years old, I had a freaking blast. And I'm like, you know what? I wouldn't hate it just working with women like this all the time because I'll tell you something, when it comes to coaching, you need like brutal honesty to do our jobs correctly. And that's one thing moms have in like they have that down. Don't hold word, they don't mince words at all. I ask a question and it's like, I'll give it to you. So
Hmm.
when it comes to things like menopause, when it comes to things like family stress and things like that, they're straight shooters. They just tell me how it is, and we're able to troubleshoot and get them on their way and make a lot of progress.
Yeah. Um, I'd love to just also touch base on like your thoughts behind things like curves, Orange Theory, F45, not to call them out in a sense, but at least
Mhm.
like their style of training. What are your thoughts about that specifically for fat loss versus something like more of a bodybuilding strength uh type workouts? And why are both perhaps beneficial or not as beneficial, especially for your niche here?
Yeah, I really think it comes down to what section that person is on in their journey. Like when it comes to somebody's training age. So if anybody's not familiar with that term, it's like how long have you been lifting consistently? How long have you been exercising consistently and where you're at on your journey? So if you're right in the beginning, I kind of look at it like if anybody's familiar with Dan John, he has like these four different stages of lifting. And that first one is exploration, where it's like gym class. It's like these group classes where it's like people are just exploring what fitness is about, how their body moves, how their body feels. And if you're in that stage and you're a super duper beginner, that's perfect for you because you're just showing up to class and it's saying just do this and you do it and you see how your body responds. The only downside is that that's very short-lived. So after the first few months, you make a ton of progress and then all of a sudden it just stops. And that's because when you get to a certain point in the class, there's limiting factors. So one of those being most classes don't have dumbbells or kettlebells or whatever over that 20, 25-pound range. And when you get to that point where you just stop increasing weight, your body does not get the same response to build muscle, to build that bone density that everybody wants to live a high quality life and burn a lot of calories. Now, another limiting factor is time. So if you're doing interval style and you're limited to a certain amount of time and you can only use a certain weight and you can't increase repetitions, you can't increase that weight in that time frame, then you're again, as soon as you're stuck in that box, you're now limited on your growth for muscle, for bone density, and calorie burn overall.
Mm. Now, to just switch topics here just a little bit. How is it different just from coaching men versus women? Like, what are some of the things that you need to look out for more specifically?
Yeah, and I'll talk in generalities here
Yeah.
because everybody's different. There's people that break the mold in both directions, but in general, men are much less likely to ask for help and to buy in as fast.
Mhm.
because every dude who ever went to the gym in high school is like, I know what I'm doing, man. I'm good. I'm good. And then the women are like, I mean, when I was younger, girls weren't even in the gym. So like,
Mhm.
tell me what to do. I just don't know what I'm really doing. I've seen Jillian Michaels. I've seen Jane Fonda. Like clearly their stuff isn't working for me. What should I do?
Mhm. Yeah. So, how did you get like women that obviously there's so many different physiological differences between us and them? How do
Mhm.
you get women to start to trust you now?
Yeah, it
You're not
really
going
comes
through the
down.
same things. Yeah, sorry to cut you off there.
Oh, no, no worries. It really comes down to experience because what I like to do in my coaching style is set people up to experience whatever it is we're trying to achieve or whatever it is I'm trying to show them and then guide them in the right direction. So, for example, one of the big things that comes up is increasing weight and fearing getting bulky, for example.
Mm.
Like no guy has I take that back. I've had a couple, but kind of confused me in the moment, but no guys usually are asking, how do I not get bulky? Like, I really just don't want to get bulky. And then when it comes to ladies, I'm like, listen, what I want you to do is embrace what I call this double up rule. So, for one main lift out of the workout, you're going to do 5 repetitions for the first 3 sets. And on that fourth one, I want you to try and get as many as you can. And if you can get double, so if you were doing 5, if you can do 10, you just prove to yourself that you're stronger than that 5 repetitions. So, we're going to go up in weight. And then as we do that for however long we're doing this, I want you to tell me the second that like you start feeling bulky. The
Mm.
second that you feel like this is too much, just let me know. Because just to let you know, muscle takes a long ass time to build. It's kind of like watching paint dry. So it's not like you're going to wake up overnight and say, oh shit, or sorry, can I curse on this
Yeah, we
podcast?
can do whatever.
All right. So you're not going to wake up one day and be like, oh shit, I'm bulky. Like you're going to see that coming months, years in advance. The
Mhm.
reason that a lot of people like say, oh, I feel bulky is because they had a bad night where they drank a ton of wine, ate a bunch of cheese, ate a bunch of like pizza or whatever. And they wake up feeling bigger and they're like, oh, it's because I'm bulky. It's not because I fell off the plan. But
Mhm.
before I go off on a tangent,
Yeah, no, I
that's
understand.
like one of the big ones.
Yeah. Now, how do you view like your compliance to for women that hop onto some type of like specific plan? Are a lot of them normally undereating or overeating when they come to you, especially for fat loss? Like what are some of the tactics that you use to help build compliance and where they're starting from to where they want to get to?
Yeah, at least in my experience, it's one of two things are the big ones is they're either under eating and not able to stick with it because the calories are so low that they just get into a place where they restrict, then they binge and they keep doing that restrict binge cycle over and over again.
Mhm.
So Monday through Thursday, they're eating like 1,200 calories. And then the weekend, their body's like, we're going to find a way to level the scale here.
Mhm.
And then the other thing is underreporting. So the people that are convinced that they're eating all the right things, and they're like, I eat so little and I can't lose weight. It's because they don't track correctly and
Mhm.
they're eating way more calories in these low volume foods than they think they are, or they're just not recording at all. Like where it's like they'll track for Monday through Thursday and then the Friday through Sunday. All of a sudden you're seeing, I use Everfit and it shows
Mhm.
me the weekly breakdown. And Monday through Friday or Monday through Thursday is like this nice solid line. And then all of a sudden, I see like 500 calories recorded for Saturday and Sunday, and I'm like, did we miss a few meals here?
Mhm. Yeah. And now how do you start to navigate eating out with clients because that's been one of the main themes that um is difficult for myself and my clients where we're understanding like one what is this meal like why are we having this meal first off just to walk you through a couple
Mhm.
steps that I use so what is the purpose of this meal are you just going to have fun is it a date night is it something where you're keeping your goals in mind how do you want to feel during the meal are you being present during the meal how do you want to feel after the meal and that more or less helps us come up with a plan of if it's even needed to track. Because
Yeah.
personally, I believe that not every meal needs to be tracked. It depends a lot on your goals and how you want to feel. So, how do you approach that when going to eat and eating out?
Yeah, just like you said, it is context dependent. That's first and foremost. Like, what are we getting out of this meal? Is it a celebration? If so, the goal is to celebrate.
Mm,
Don't worry about calories. One meal out of your, what is it, 21 out of the entire week is not going to mess you up.
mhm,
Okay. So, assuming that it's not some sort of celebration or a one time thing, and it's one of those things where it's like you and your husband or significant other go out once every week or two, then that's when we want to start figuring out, okay, how can we make the best of this? Because it's not one of those one, like every so often things. It's a pretty recurrent thing that could get in your way.
mhm,
So I tell people to look at it like good, better, best. Now,
mhm,
best case scenario would be you don't go at all and you cook at home and you track everything to a T.
mhm,
Now, obviously, we're not doing that. So, what's that next level? What would be better? A better would be if you know what you're going to get ahead of time, look it up in a like in your app and find
mhm,
a chain restaurant that has that option. And
mhm,
will it be 100% accurate? Absolutely not. But we're going to get in the ballpark and we're not going to be as far off as not tracking at all. So we'll have some data.
mhm,
And on top of that, just by putting it in, you're going to choose something that's not the worst option
mhm,
because just by keeping a food diary of any type, you're less likely to put in things that normally you might eat. So you're not going to have a sleeve of Oreos and put that in the tracker. You're going to
mhm.
have one or two because you don't want your coach saying what happened.
Yep,
So
yep,
that's one way to do it. And then if we're not going to do that, then what you can do is I mean, you could combine these, but if you don't want to track, you could also go the method of what's the best case scenario based on this menu, something steamed, something baked, grilled, something in that ballpark that is not deep fried or loaded with cheese, the common sense stuff.
mhm,
And just know that you're getting a solid meal that you're going to enjoy more so than being at home because somebody else is cooking it. It's an actual chef cooking it. Doesn't have to be the most calorie dense thing on the menu.
mhm.
It's still going to be better than what you get at home.
Yeah. Now, when you had said common sense, like a light bulb went up for me. What are some of the things that to you and I may be common sense, but you find when someone comes into your coaching program, like common misconceptions that you or I may think that are just common sense? What are some of the
Yeah.
basics that you see there?
One of the things that's top of mind is tracking and how to track correctly. Because a lot of people think when they're tracking calories, they can eyeball it and guesstimate it because they're not really like all in on it and trying to
Mhm,
figure out how to do it right. They're like, I'll do my version of it. I'll kind of like do what I feel like is necessary. And then they make all these mistakes and underestimations and they're stuck and they're like, what the hell? I'm tracking calories for X amount of time. And it's like, you weren't though.
mhm,
So us knowing how kind of anal you have to be in the beginning is common sense, but for a lot of
mm,
people, they don't know. Like you can't just guesstimate because if we're they've literally done studies on this where
mhm.
people guesstimate what they're eating and we're usually underestimating by 500 to like 1,000 calories.
Yeah.
And there goes your deficit right there.
Yep.
That's top of mind. And then other than that, one of the other things too is just how quote unquote bad something could be.
Mm,
So when we're out to dinner, for example, it's like, how bad could that like appetizer of mac and cheese be? Or
mhm,
that dessert? Like, how far off can that be? And then you put it into the tracker and you're like, whoa, okay, there goes my entire deficit for the entire week because I decided to have a bloomin' onion.
mhm. Yeah. It's I think one of like the most common things is especially like people in like the workplace, right? With a 9 to 5 office type job where someone brings in some type of cake or something
Yep.
and you could it could be as simple as like a Stop and Shop or a Shaw's or whatever. I'm not sure where you are in terms of grocery stores. But something like that, like when you read the actual nutrition label, it's like 1/8 of one slice is like 300 calories and you had a whole slice,
Yep.
and then all of a sudden you're at 2,400 calories and you're like, I only had one slice. Like, what is this? Like 500 calories? Like, I think that's a big part of it for sure.
Yeah, it's like those Lenny and Larry's cookies, how they make their label for half the cookie and
Yep.
people are like, "Oh, this is healthy. It's got all these great ingredients in
Oh
it." And it's
man.
like, "All right, well, it says it's like what, 200, 250 calories for
Mhm.
half. All right,
Yeah.
that's basically a meal and a cookie. So
Yeah.
if you're willing to make that trade-off, great, but don't treat it like a snack."
Yep. And like, first off, those cookies suck. Okay. They're like they're just not good. Like I've
Yeah.
found so many different protein bars and brownies that are way better. And I
Oh
think
yeah.
one of the issues that people run into as well is that they treat like those protein substitutes as meals a good amount of time, where they grab one of those like Met RX bars and it's 400 calories and they're like, this will keep me full. And then in an hour, all of a sudden they're wondering why they're hungry,
Yeah. And I
you
think
know?
there's also a big disconnect when they see people such as you and me fitting that into the day. We know how that fits and how to work everything else around it.
Hmm.
But the general public is kind of like, well, that's a health food. So I can just fit that into my day, regardless of how everything else is.
Hmm.
And that's the real big thing that people need to learn is how to actually fit stuff in while staying within a calorie budget that satisfies their goals. Because a lot of people are just like, oh, this is healthy. Oh, this has protein. I'll eat that. And it's not enough if we really are trying to achieve a goal.
Yeah. Especially like I think one of the biggest things with those as well is just the hunger cues it gives as well. I had a client reach out to me just the other day where she was like, "Hey, I have X amount of calories left. I already put in my dinner and everything, but I'm starving." And I'm like, "Well, what did you have?" And it was like two protein bars already and just like those snack type like protein health foods, exactly what you're saying, where that's not keeping us satisfied. You know,
Yeah.
if you had a meal of chicken, rice, veggies versus a protein bar, that's going to keep you so much more full and satiated than just having a protein bar that says 15 grams of protein in it.
Yeah. And I
Um,
think one of the things too that when if I were to think, what would I want to do if I wanted to not see any success, if I wanted to fail completely, I would go only by marketing.
mm,
Because when they slap protein on the label, all of a sudden it's like, well, this is a good food. Or
yeah,
when it says meal replacement, it's like, okay, so I can have this instead of a meal, just like your client. And it's
yeah.
like, well, did that have the same effect as a meal? Do you feel as full? No.
Hmm.
So marketers are doing their job getting it into your hands, but make no mistake, they don't have your health. They don't have your hunger cues. They don't have any of that at the forefront of their minds. They just want to push units and make money. And that's fine. That's their job. Your job is to figure out what you need and to ignore the marketing.
Hmm. Now, so to piggyback off of that, how do you approach grocery shopping and what to be on the lookout for? What should or should not, quote unquote, be in your cart, and where people are making mistakes when they're doing things like this?
Yeah, the biggest thing is showing up with a list because one of the worst things you could do is just go down every single aisle and see what grabs your eye, especially if you're going there hungry.
Mm,
Because if you didn't eat or have some sort of a snack beforehand, anything that looks remotely tasty, you're going to be like, well, I'm going to want that later in the week. Okay. And then pop it in. And then all of a sudden, you have this cart full of stuff that you don't need that's going to pull you further away from your goals. Notice I'm not saying bad, doesn't make you a
mhm,
bad person. There's no morality tied to this, but let's be real. It's not going to get you closer to your goals.
mhm,
Now, if you want to set yourself up for success, make that list in order of the outside, the perimeter of the grocery store. So hit the veggies and fruits, then make your way to the produce, or sorry, that is the produce. Then make your way to the meats and the lean stuff. Then like I'm thinking about the shop right near me, like the
mhm.
the way that it's laid out.
Yep.
So basically what I do is go through the produce section, grab all the veggies, fruits, then make my way over towards the back where the deli is and grab all the chicken, the lean beef, turkey, things like that, and then go around to the dairy, grab some almond milk, some eggs, maybe even some turkey bacon, and then wrap it around to the frozen section or where the cheeses are and things like that. So that way, the very last thing that I'm going towards is the frozen stuff. And just so you guys know, when I say frozen, I'm talking about like frozen vegetables
Mhm,
because that's one of the biggest game changers for me personally in the last year is
mhm,
leaning on the frozen veggies because there's absolutely zero downside to them and they're flash frozen at their prime. So they haven't been sitting around getting closer and closer to rotting.
mhm,
Um, but then after that, then you look at your list and you're like, all right, what else do I need? And only go to those aisles. So when you do that, not only are you making a lot better decisions for yourself, you're also saving a shit ton of money
mhm,
because those little snacks that you just throw, oh, it's $5, whatever, boom. And then you throw another one in and another one in and another one in. And all of a sudden it's like 20, 30, 40, $50 of snacks in that
Mhm.
grocery cart. And if that's every single week, that's $50 a week for like 4 or 5 weeks, $250 right there. You could afford a damn good coach by just cutting out your
Mhm.
damn snacks.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. So while we're on the same like realm of food, expect I'm not 100% sure like how much it differences between like men and women, at least just personally. So how much of a role does your digestion play, especially when you're trying to diet for fat loss? And when I say I don't like understand the difference, like are women more prone to different digestive issues or are there I mean, again, we have to generalize in a sense, but what have you seen and how is it that you're able to really look at and improve someone's digestion, especially for women?
Yeah, because it is pretty individual, person to person, rather than sex to sex between the digestion part, especially depending on the irritants that irritate your body specifically. Some people just can't handle dairy, some can't handle
Mhm,
gluten and things like that. Like for example, myself, I can't really handle gluten, and what happens is when I have gluten, what happens is the microflora of my intestine just kind of, it's like a lawnmower goes through. These things are like little
mhm,
fingerlings that absorb nutrients and pull them out. And then they are basically just completely mowed over, and I can't absorb things as well. And it's very apparent. So certain people need to be aware of those irritants. That's why things like Whole30, paleo, like people feel really good on those because that usually removes them. But when it comes to, in particular, women, one of the big things, and it's not even a digestion thing, but it can be, is when we're in that stage of perimenopause or when they've officially hit menopause,
mhm,
that insulin resistance they're at a higher risk for it. And also sometimes certain, um, what is the word? Certain, like things that just don't sit well
mhm,
after that point, because at when you hit that point and your hormones are changing and your body's changing, everybody, when it comes to menopause in particular,
mhm,
every woman is different.
mhm,
Nobody's menopause experience is the same. There's similarities, but there's a lot of differences. And one of the things is that sometimes people can't handle certain foods the way that they used to. So it really comes down to the golden rule of know thyself and
mhm,
kind of take tabs, or really check in with yourself on, if I eat this, does it feel like there's a brick in my stomach? And
mhm,
when I push it out, is that normal looking when it hits the bowl, or
mhm,
is it a little off? And
mhm,
I'm not going to get into the details because
mhm.
not a big fan of talking about poo, but
Yep.
everybody do yourself a favor, just Google a poo chart and
Yeah.
then figure out where you are. There's a spectrum and you want to be in the middle. And that's a really good tell of your digestion.
Mhm,
So if you feel like you could be getting better digestion, then one of the best things you can do is do Whole30 or paleo for like 30 days and then slowly reintroduce things to see how your body responds. And then you can play that game of trial and error. Like, does this feel good? Does this not feel good?
mhm. So a good amount of like the viewers that are going to listen to this um the main question and concern that a lot of people throw at me is that they say my hormones just aren't what they used to be, like that type of terminology. When is it actually time to go and get blood work or have your hormones checked and something where your thyroid isn't producing like it used to in a sense, like when is actually the right time to start, for lack of a better term, I'll say blaming your hormones?
The right time is yesterday. And then
Okay.
the better time is now, because
Okay.
there's no downside to getting tested and figuring out what's going on under the hood.
Mhm.
Because fitness and nutrition is not just going to the gym. It's not just eating the right things. It's actually getting your blood work done and seeing what kind of effect it's having on your health. So, if that is hormonal health, then we can control for factors that can improve it. Like, let's say you do get tested and cortisol's through the roof or
Mhm.
whatever, and we find out that, hey, you've been working out 2 a days, 7 days a week.
Mhm.
Maybe we'll dial it down to 4 days a week of just strength training and walking and see what happens. And then all of a sudden, maybe it'll come down. You never really know.
Mhm.
It puts us in a position as coaches like, okay, we have some ideas. Let's see if they work. And then you get retested and see if that helps. And then
Mhm.
because they're in the hands of a medical professional, if they do have something super concerning, like their thyroid is off, or they do have insulin resistance to the point that like it's diabetic and they need medication, that makes our jobs even easier because when they're medicated to the point where their bodies are in a place where they're healthier and they're able to
Mhm.
function better, then you're going to get better results. So one of the best things you could do before doing anything is going to the doctor and saying, hey, can you just run like a full panel on me and just make
Mhm.
sure that everything's good to go? And then take it a step further. If you're really concerned about your hormones, ask for a referral to an endocrinologist.
Mhm.
Sometimes you don't even need a referral. Like you might be able to just call up the office and ask, do I need to be referred by my primary? And if they say no, set it up because
Mhm.
endocrinologists, that's literally their job. They've been going to medical school and then residency and then fellowship, almost 10 years of this stuff, knowing all this stuff backed by multiple hundreds of thousands of studies. They're going to give you the best answer.
Mhm. Now, while we're in this same realm, I think it would be helpful for the audience to go over some of the underlying stressors that people are unaware of, that are actually impacting your hormone health.
Mhm. Yeah, that's a good topic because this is one of those things not a lot of people talk about. And a lot of people kind of bastardize on social media because they're like, I'm a hormone coach, I'm a
Mhm.
hormone specialist. And it's like, all right, you took a certification for a couple hours, let's chill.
Mhm.
So when it comes to the things we know make a big difference, one is like we just talked about training, making sure that your training volume is right, not the most. We don't want to do the most. We want to do the right amount to satisfy your goals because exercise is a kind of like medication. There is a point where you can overdo it and experience side effects from that. So if you're working out 2 a days all the time, not eating enough calories to sustain that, and your sleep isn't great, your nutrition isn't great, you are now making exercise a negative stressor.
Mhm.
So for most people, especially women in that 40 plus range, 2 to 4 times a week of strength training, doing mostly compound exercises is perfect. And then having either walking or some sort of low intensity, steady state cardio on the off days is really good. That's the sweet spot for most people. Then, like I just mentioned, another thing is sleep. And
Mhm.
that is something that is very hard to come by when we're in perimenopause, in menopause, because of a multitude of different factors like hot flushes, just being woken up because of a hormonal fluctuation, like having kids in the house when they're like younger, or having your parents, like taking care of parents that need around the clock help. There's just a million things that can go on at that age group that can disrupt sleep.
Mhm.
And when we can figure that out and somehow get in the ballpark of 7 to 9 hours, most women listening to this are probably going to be laughing, but
Mhm.
5 to 6 hours is like, I'd like to get that up, but many, that's like the max that they can get. And if that's
Mhm.
the case, then maximizing the sleep quality. So making sure that we're minimizing the amount of times you wake up, we're minimizing the amount of time it takes to get back to sleep, like controlling certain factors, like getting rid of the phone if possible, getting rid of little lights, making sure the temperature is right, making sure that you have a change of clothes for if you sweat through them so you can just get right back to bed, things like that. And then there's also nutrition. So if you're eating next to nothing, that's a stressor. Like if you
Mhm.
are starving yourself, your body is going to be stressed. People don't realize that a lot of times when we put people into a reverse diet and they start eating more calories, all of a sudden their sleep gets better.
Mhm.
Like this is why a lot of coaches prefer to start people in a reverse rather than right going into a diet, because
Mhm.
when you can crank up those calories and keep them consistent, things like sleep improve, things like stress management overall improves. And that's
Mhm.
like the last thing I wanted to talk about was stress management.
Mhm.
Another thing that I talk about, I say, we're going to work on stress, and I get a lot of laughs. It's like, if only. And
Yeah.
it's like, yes, I get it. Life is nuts. Like
Mhm.
kids, parents, job, life in general, political climate, there are a million things that you have reasons to be stressed about that you can't get away from. But
Mhm.
we want to control the things that you can. So Are you the type of person that has the news on 24/7 because it's just background noise, but you
Mhm.
always tune in as soon as you get all annoyed and heated and like you get very passionate or pissed off? That's a stress right there.
Mhm.
So if you really want to manage your stress and put yourself in the best situation possible, give yourself 30 minutes a day to catch yourself up, get informed, and that's good because let's be honest, you don't need hours of news every single day to be informed.
Mhm.
And most times, I have avoided the news actively for the
Mhm.
last like 5, 10 years. You still find out. There,
Mhm.
if something's big enough to be an issue, you
Mhm.
still find out.
Mhm.
And that's one of the big ones. And also just limiting your exposure to people that are stressors. So that one friend that always has something to complain about, that one family member like mother, father, sister, brother that always is just something's wrong all
Mhm.
the time. Creating productive boundaries where it's like, listen, I want to be here for you, but I can't be here for you all the time and let you bring me down to the point where it's affecting my health.
Mhm. Yeah.
So things like that.
Yeah, this is very helpful just for um the amount of people that are going to listen to this. I think this is really helpful just to take that small audit of these four factors that you've just laid out for us. Where am I lacking? Where am I not giving enough attention to? And one of the biggest things for myself that stuck out that I really love is the starting with the reverse diet, especially when people come and they're doing that binge cycle, just like you had mentioned in previously, or they're doing 1,500, 1,600 calories, XYZ arbitrary numbers. But as soon as you start to reverse diet, all of those stressors start to improve. And then when your body is more, again, I'll just say ready for an actual fat loss phase, you're actually going to have calories to be able to pull from, and your body's going to respond so much better. I think that was really important that you laid that out there. So, one topic that you had also talked about is when how important like children are, especially for mothers, right? And
Mhm.
there's a very large majority of mothers, and this is going to be my opinion, and I'd love yours on it. So, for a lot of mothers, my kids are the most important thing to me, and they take a back seat. Is there a is that something that you agree with, or are you more on, I'll say, my side in a sense, where you need to be the most important? And I'm not saying that your kids come second, but you need to be able to take care of yourself as well as set the example in order to make sure that you take care of them.
Yeah, so I always start this off by saying I admire the shit out of moms because
Mhm.
that level of selflessness is something that a lot of us, especially the younger guys, have no concept of.
It's a
Like
yeah.
we can't even imagine like missing a workout, let alone putting every dollar that we make behind somebody else and making sure that every block of time in our day is devoted to making their life as best as we possibly can. Like I can't even fathom that. I know when
Mhm.
kids come into the picture that that will take precedent, but
Mhm.
that mindset is something I admire the shit out of
Mhm.
because I'm not even there yet.
Yeah.
But that being said, there is that typical metaphor of you got to put your oxygen mask on first before
Mhm.
helping the person next to you. And if you're the type of mom that's tired and wired, like you're literally running on caffeine, you feel stressed all the time, you have nothing really to give, and you're just kind of showing up and doing your best, and it feels like you're stretched thin,
Mhm.
then you're not giving your best. And that's not to criticize, it's just to paint the awareness of
Mhm.
like, this is what it is. But you'd be surprised how much more you have to give if you take that hour to yourself during the day. If you budget a little bit to get the help that you need. And all of a sudden, it's like, are you spending like less time with your kids?
Mhm.
Possibly. But time you do spend is better spent and it's higher quality. So
Mhm.
instead of taking your kids to the park, sitting on the bench because your knees hurt or you just really can't keep up with them, now you're running around with them
Mhm.
instead of like when you're just again you're just in pain or like you don't feel good about your body and you're on vacation and you're passing it up, saying, no, I'll read my book. Oh, I'll stay back. Don't worry about me. Like, you go. Instead
Mhm.
of doing that, now you're an active participant in the vacation and being there and creating memories. And that's the time. It's not about spending the most time. It's about spending the best time with your kids. And if that's really the goal, then you got to take time for yourself.
Mhm. Yeah, that's a great way just to lay things out and to be able to really look at, again, like that's the same thing that we talked about, just like when you're going out to eat, what is like being present while you're there.
Yeah.
And I think
And
that
actually,
those could be, yeah, yeah.
sorry to cut you off. I just remembered a really good example from Molly Galbraith, who's one of like the leaders in the space of women's health and fitness. She said one of the biggest things that like kills her like is the fact that she doesn't have more pictures of her mom or
Mm,
more pictures of her sister because they were overweight and they didn't feel good about themselves and they didn't want to take any pictures. Now she's left with her memories instead of having like things to look at because they just didn't feel comfortable in their own skin.
mhm,
And I don't want to get anybody in their feels too much right now,
mhm,
but like, do you want to leave your kids without pictures of you, without these videos of you because you just don't feel comfortable about how you look or how you feel?
mhm. And you know what? That's a conversation where sometimes it is necessary, even if it's coming from people like us, where it is necessary not to put you in your place, but at least bring some awareness and have the more difficult conversations with you in order to help you realize more of what you want. So I think that
Yeah,
that's a
it's
great point.
yeah, it's our jobs as coaches not to judge, not to criticize, but to just bring awareness to it.
Mhm,
Because if we're always kind of dancing around it and trying to be super duper nice about things that are very serious, then we're not doing our jobs and you're going to suffer because you didn't get the straight truth about it. Like one of my favorite sayings, do you watch Hell's Kitchen at all?
no.
The most recent season, the guy, I won't spoil anything, but there's an Irish guy on there and he says it multiple times. He's like, "Don't piss on my back and tell me it's raining." So
Okay.
you don't
Yeah.
want to tell people it's raining when it's like, no,
Mhm.
there's something else going on here.
Yeah.
So when we have this accurate picture of what's going on, that gives you power. That gives you
Mm,
encourages you and empowers you to make the right decisions that are going to put you in the place you want to be in. Is it going to sting in the moment? Absolutely. But if
mhm.
it stings, that means that it's powerful enough to make a change.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really really helpful. Not even just advice, but again, what you had said, to reiterate, just the awareness of it. I'm not trying to tell you how to live your life every single moment, but help you live the kind of life that you want to live. I think that's one of the most important things for us. Not sure where you stand
Yeah.
there.
And I
Um,
think that when it comes to coaches and coaching styles, that's the most effective way that there is. Because a lot of people want this drill sergeant where it's
mhm,
like, do this, do this, do
yeah.
this. And what that does is it creates dependency. It's like, I
Hmm.
don't want to let my coach down, which is fine.
Hmm.
But what happens when that coach isn't around?
Hmm.
Then all of a sudden you've got nobody to let down. So you're like, I'll just do whatever the heck I want instead of saying, I know my options and I want to make the right decision. That's
Hmm.
how I personally lay things out. I don't know
Yeah.
about you, but like
Hmm.
when I have a client that's struggling with something, I'm just like, listen, this is what it is. We have a couple of options here. We got this we can do, this we can do, this we can do. This is like the
Hmm.
best option that's going to get you there fastest. This is the most realistic option. So this is
Hmm.
probably what I would do for you. And then if you want to like make some progress, it's not going to be as fast, but you could choose this too.
Hmm.
Take your pick. Like you're in the power position here.
Hmm. Yeah, and I think that's really important what you said of there's a level of accountability that we bring, but it shouldn't be some type of codependent relationship where what we're trying to do is not have you work with us forever. Of course, client retention is important, and sure, we would all love, like, there's a money aspect, there's a relationship aspect, all of those intertwined. But we're trying to empower you to be able to not have to rely on us so much. That way, you are actually able to go and make your own decisions and use your best discernment. So,
Yeah.
with that, I think one of the biggest things that we can do in coaches is not just because, again, we're not robots, okay? If I could just write you a meal plan and you just blindly followed it, like, one, my job would be really easy, you know? But two, for the vast majority of people, unless you're some type of competitive bodybuilder, for the most part, that's not going to happen. You're
Yeah.
gonna
Well,
want to go out.
that's the stereotypical case of like the young coach that makes all these meal plans and these
Yeah,
perfect programs and gets super pissed off because it's like nobody wants it enough. Nobody
yeah.
follows what I put down. Why are these people so lazy? And it's like,
Hmm.
no, you're just not making it realistic for an actual human being that doesn't operate like a robot or doesn't eat like a dog.
Yeah. Yeah. And um I mean, this isn't just something where we're bashing everyone, but bringing awareness and like understanding and vetting different coaches where you can go and find someone where your communication styles are going to mesh. And I think one of the important things too is that you want a coach that's also going to challenge you. Because if I just challenge and educate, um for example, like for myself, I don't know everything. And when I don't know something, I just let someone know. Like for example, like I've already told you different things that I didn't know. I've at least said, "Hey, I don't know." Things of that nature. But at least I can reach out and find the actual answers. So, one, to educate you, but to challenge you is one of the biggest things that we need to do. Um, because I want you to be able to use like this critical thinking so that on a Sunday where I'm not answering different messages, you can go and actually, and hopefully you've told me beforehand when you're navigating an event, but you can go and make like that best doable option that you've talked about in order so that you don't have to like say, oh my God, I need to call Shawn or Bryan up so that I know if I can eat this cupcake or do I need to measure it or weigh it XYZ. So that's one of the biggest things that I've found is being able to like challenge people and say, look, well, one of my favorite things to say, well, what do you think you should do? And then we have a small conversation about it.
Yeah. And I kind of, it's not controversial, but I mean,
Mhm,
I've started to do this and I know a lot of people have certain opinions in one way or the other, but especially with workouts, I'll
mhm,
put together what a standard template would kind of look like.
mhm,
And with the software that I use, it allows you to put in substitute exercises instead of like I know Trainerize would give you like every single one, but
mhm,
this one gives you like the ability to put however many you want.
mhm,
And I treat it kind of like a multiple choice test where it's like, all right, if you can't do this,
mhm,
what's the option that you should be doing? And then we
mhm,
have a discussion about it because I think one of the things that gets lost as coaches is the fact that we, like you said, need to teach people how to be resilient and how to make the right decisions when everything isn't according to plan.
mhm,
So when somebody no longer works with us, because let's be honest, most people can't make that investment for the rest of their life, and that's totally
mhm,
okay. But in that time frame with us, we need to teach them how to navigate the waters. So if
mhm,
they pick up a different workout program and then they get hurt, did we really do our jobs?
mhm,
No. Like we need to be able to tell them, hey, when you see this, you do this instead.
mhm,
And then with nutrition, it's like, hey, you're given this opportunity to eat this. What do you know you should be eating?
mhm,
And in that moment, you could choose one way or the other, but you have the knowledge. And that's the difference.
mhm. And I think an important factor with that is also like if I put an incline bench press on your program and you go into the gym at 5 o'clock and every single incline bench press is
Yes.
taken, like what are you going to do? How are you going to navigate that? Are you going
Or
to
when you're on
substitute?
vacation, what do you
Mm,
do? At
yep,
a hotel, what do you do?
yep. So are you going to be someone that goes and substitute that exercise? Are you going to put it towards the end? Like those types of things for me, like depending on the exercise or depending if you put it at the end, as long as you stuck to the program in a sense and you used your best judgment of this is what's going to work for me today, that's all that really matters to me at least.
Yeah. And the overarching principle of are we pushing it hard enough? Like, are
Hmm.
we keeping that 2 reps in reserve? If
Hmm.
so, if we have to change it up, it's okay because we're still getting the stimulus that we need. Is it the same? No, but it's close enough and it's going to push us further in the right direction than doing nothing or doing something totally different.
Hmm. Yeah. And like just to like the biggest thing is people that go to the gym and when you're a beginner, lifting any type of weight is going to cause you to change,
Yep.
but eventually when you're doing just like we had the conversation to full circle this once again, like when you're going through the same motions, the same weight, the same tempo all of that, you're just going through the motions and you're not causing your body. There's no reason for your body to actually change.
Yep.
So, um, so Bryan, where can we find you, touch base with you, work with you, connect with you, all of that good stuff?
Yeah, so across all social medias, it's coach_fits with two Z's. So FITZZ. I got my own podcast, which Shawn is going to be on very, very soon. It's the Fit 40 podcast. And yeah, and I also have my Facebook group, which is like the home base of everything that I do. And we run challenges monthly. So that's the Fit 40 family on Facebook.
Okay, awesome. So our last question is a guest from the last podcast. So this is from one of my good brothers, Josh Powers. So if money did not matter and you could wake up to your perfect day, what would it look like?
Hmm, interesting. I would say, honestly, as it stands like right now, perfect day would be one in my own home, not in this apartment complex sharing walls. Um, then kind of meandering throughout the morning, just like scrolling a little bit, getting a nice start to the day. Honestly, doing a podcast every day would be pretty
Mm,
sweet because I love talking shop
hmm
and just doing like I guess check-ins are kind of like a pain in some ways, but
hmm
I do feel good doing those. So if that could all get done by like noon and then the rest of the day play video games, I'd be set.
Not exactly how I would put my perfect day, but I don't hate it for you, you know? So, all right, sweet. Bryan, I appreciate you coming on. Um, and we'll chat soon. All right. Thanks, guys.